The moment I pull into my driveway, I know something is wrong. Jason's silver BMW is parked at an aggressive angle, blocking my garage. Before I can even turn off the engine, he's storming toward my car, his face red as a tomato. Behind him, Vanessa stands with her arms crossed, her designer sunglasses perched on her head, looking like she wants to murder someone. Me, apparently. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" Jason yanks open my car door before I can even unbuckle my seatbelt. My heart hammers in my chest, but I keep my face neutral. After 42 years married to Henry, I've learned to stay calm when men raise their voices. I step out slowly, clutching my purse. "Hello, Jason. Vanessa, I wasn't expecting you." "She almost fainted at the ATM," Jason shouts, jabbing his finger toward Vanessa, who has now started pacing back and forth on my lawn, her heels sinking into the grass I watered just this morning. The card was declined. Do you know how embarrassing that was? In front of everyone at the grocery store. I blink at him, playing confused. "What card, honey? I don't understand." "Your bank card," Vanessa shrieks, abandoning her pacing to march over to us. Her perfectly made-up face is twisted with rage. "The one you gave us for emergencies. It doesn't work anymore. What did you do? Are you demented?" Jason grabs my shoulders, and I see something in his eyes I've never seen before. Not concern, but desperation, panic. "Did you change your bank information? Did someone convince you to do that? Mom, you can't just make these decisions without telling us." I look at my son, my only child, the baby I rocked through colic and nursed through chicken pox. And I feel something inside me turn to ice. For months, I've had suspicions, strange charges on my statements, money missing, their elaborate vacations while claiming they're struggling. But seeing him shake me on my own driveway, seeing Vanessa's fury at being denied access to money that isn't hers, I know everything I've discovered is true. I step back from Jason's grip and straighten my cardigan. When I speak, my voice is steady as bedrock. "I changed my bank information because I discovered you've been stealing from me for the past 8 months. I have evidence, I have records, and I've already filed a police report." The color drains from Jason's face. Vanessa's mouth falls open. For a moment, nobody moves. Then Vanessa stumbles backward, her hand pressed to her chest, making a show of gasping for air. Jason's knees seem to buckle, and he catches himself on the hood of my car. "The police are on their way," I continue, pulling my phone from my purse, "along with my attorney. You're both going to pay back every cent, and you're going to face charges for elder financial abuse. Where are you watching from tonight? And have you ever discovered someone you trusted was betraying you? Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you is a story I never imagined I'd have to live. Let me back up and tell you how this whole nightmare started. My name is Margaret Patterson, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 68 years old, and until 18 months ago, I was happily married to my high school sweetheart, Henry. We had 42 beautiful years together before pancreatic cancer took him in just 3 months. This isn't a sad story about his death. Henry wouldn't want that. He left me well provided for, with our house paid off, a decent pension from his factory supervisor job, and about $87,000 in savings we'd built over decades of careful living. I was a third-grade teacher for 35 years, retired 6 years ago with a pension of $3,200 a month, plus my Social Security. Not rich, but comfortable, secure, independent. That's what Henry and I had always wanted, to never be a burden on our son. After Henry passed, I went through the normal grieving process. The empty house, the 2 quiet dinners, the mornings when I'd make 2 cups of coffee out of habit, then stare at the extra one getting cold. But I kept busy volunteering at the library, tending my garden, having coffee with the ladies from church. I thought I was doing okay. Jason is my only child. We had trouble conceiving after he was born, so he got all my love, all my attention. Maybe I spoiled him. Henry used to warn me about that, especially when Jason was a teenager. "You're making him soft, Maggie. Henry would say. "He needs to learn the value of $1. But I'd just smile and slip Jason another 20 for the movies. What mother doesn't want to give her child everything? Jason grew up to be successful. At least, that's what I thought. He worked in medical device sales, always wearing sharp suits and driving nice cars. He married Vanessa 6 years ago at a country club wedding that cost more than our first house. Vanessa was a petite blonde with a real estate license and expensive taste in everything from handbags to vacations. They seemed happy, ambitious, the kind of couple who posted perfect photos on social media. After Henry died, Jason started visiting more often. At first, I was grateful. What mother wouldn't be? He'd come by every Sunday for dinner, bringing Vanessa along. She'd compliment my cooking, help with the dishes, ask about my week. It felt good to have family around again. About 10 months ago, during one of those Sunday dinners, Vanessa brought up something that seemed reasonable at the time. We were clearing the dishes, and she put her hand on my arm with this concerned expression I'd seen her practice in Facebook photos. "Maggie, Jason, and I have been talking," she said in that sweet voice she used when she wanted something. "With you living alone now, what if something happened? What if you had a fall or a medical emergency and needed access to funds quickly?" I paused with a plate in my hand. "I have my credit cards, dear, and my ATM card." "But what if you're unconscious?" She widened her eyes dramatically. "Or confused? Wouldn't it be smart to have us listed on one of your accounts just for emergencies? Just so we can help if you need it?" Jason joined us in the kitchen, nodding seriously. "Mom, it's just responsible planning. Look what happened with Mrs. Henderson down the street. She had that stroke, and it took her kids weeks to get access to help pay her medical bills." I thought about it. Mrs. Henderson had been in a coma for 10 days before she died. Her children had struggled to pay the hospital. It seemed prudent, responsible. And truthfully, a small part of me liked the idea of my son being more involved, taking care of me the way I'd taken care of him. So the next week, Jason drove me to the bank, and we added both their names to my checking account as authorized users. The account where my pension and Social Security were directly deposited, $3,700 every month. "This is just for emergencies," I told them firmly as we walked out of the bank. "This is my living money." "Of course, Mom," Jason assured me, squeezing my shoulder. "We would never touch it unless you absolutely needed us to." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my son. For the first month, everything seemed normal. Then, in late October, I was checking my statement online and noticed a charge for $215 at a steakhouse called Morton's. I'd never been to Morton's. I called Jason. "Oh yeah, remember?" His voice sounded rushed, distracted. "You asked me to pick up dinner that night when your friend Barbara was visiting. You wanted to treat her to something nice. I didn't remember that, because it hadn't happened. Barbara and I had eaten tuna sandwiches in my kitchen that night. But I was 68, recently widowed, and everyone kept making jokes about senior moments. Maybe I had forgotten. Maybe grief was affecting my memory more than I realized. 2 weeks later, there was a $350 charge at a boutique in Columbus. When I asked Vanessa about it, she smiled brightly. "Oh, honey, I picked up some clothes for you, elastic waist pants and comfortable shoes. I noticed yours were getting worn. They're in my car. I'll bring them next Sunday." But the next Sunday came and went. No clothes. When I mentioned it, Vanessa looked confused. "Didn't I bring those already? Check your closet, Maggie. You probably just forgot." I checked my closet. Nothing new. But I didn't push it. Maybe she'd forgotten. Maybe I was being paranoid. The charges kept coming, though. Small at first. $180 at a spa. $420 at an electronics store. Each time I questioned them, they had an explanation. Each time, they made me feel like I was the one being unreasonable, forgetful, or overly suspicious. "Mom, we're trying to help you." Jason said with exasperation in his voice when I called about a $500 cash withdrawal I didn't make. You're not tracking your spending well. Maybe we should think about having someone come in to help you with your finances, like a professional? That stung. I'd been managing household finances for over 40 years. I'd put Jason through college with careful budgeting. I'd helped Henry run our household budget down to the penny. But I swallowed my pride and tried to keep better track of things. Then, about 4 months ago, I noticed Jason wearing a new watch. Not just any watch, a Rolex. The real kind, not a knockoff. I recognized it because Henry had always wanted one, but said it was too impractical. That's beautiful, I said, touching his wrist. Is it new? He pulled his arm back slightly. Yeah, sales bonus. Had a really good quarter. That's wonderful, honey. You've worked so hard. But the very next week, they came over looking serious, stressed. Jason sat me down at my own kitchen table and took my hand. Mom, I need to ask you something, and it's hard for me. He looked genuinely pained. Vanessa and I are struggling with our mortgage. The interest rates have gone crazy, and we're behind on payments. Could you possibly lend us $2,000, just until I get my next commission check? My son was struggling. Of course I said yes. I wrote him a check that afternoon. 2 weeks after that, I was scrolling through Facebook, something I'd started doing more since Henry died, just to feel connected to people. And I saw Vanessa's vacation photos. Pristine white sand beaches. Crystal blue water. Expensive-looking restaurants with lobster and champagne. Jet skiing, parasailing. The caption read, "Living our best life in Aruba. Sometimes you just need to escape and recharge." Blessed, just island life. Luxury travel. I stared at those photos for a long time. A vacation like that cost at least $5,000, probably more. How could they afford Aruba if they couldn't afford their mortgage payment? When they came over for Sunday dinner after they got back, tanned and relaxed, I tried to ask casually, "How was the trip? It looked beautiful. Must have been a nice break from your money troubles." Vanessa's smile tightened just slightly. "Oh, that was a work trip. Jason's company paid for most of it. Team-building retreat." "I didn't realize medical device sales companies did tropical retreats," I said mildly. Jason jumped in quickly. "Yeah, they're trying something new. Employee retention program." He changed the subject. "What's for dinner? It smells amazing." But something in their voices felt wrong. The way they exchanged a quick glance. The way Jason's laugh sounded forced. The way Vanessa wouldn't quite meet my eyes. That night, after they left, I sat at Henry's old desk and did something I'd been avoiding. I logged into my bank account and really looked at the statements. 3 full months of statements. I got out a yellow highlighter and marked every charge I hadn't made. Restaurant, $215. Clothing boutique, $350. Spa, $180. Electronics, $420. Cash withdrawal, $500. Another restaurant, $300. Jewelry store, $400. Another cash withdrawal, $750. I kept highlighting, kept adding. My hand started shaking. When I finished, the total made me feel physically sick. Over $12,000 had been drained from my account in just 3 months. $12,000. I grabbed the phone and called Jason. It was almost 11 at night, but I didn't care. My whole body was trembling. "Mom? What's wrong? It's late." "Jason, I'm looking at my bank statements." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "There are thousands of dollars in charges I didn't make." A pause. Then his voice changed, became soothing, patronizing. "Mom, you probably just don't remember. You've been a bit forgetful lately. It's completely normal at your age." "I am not forgetful," I snapped, surprising both of us. "I know exactly what I spend money on, and I did not stay at a hotel in Cleveland or buy $400 worth of jewelry." Okay, calm down." That tone again, like he was talking to a confused child. "I'll come over tomorrow and we'll sort through it together." You're probably just confused about some of the charges. Maybe there's fraud on your account. We'll call the bank together and get it straightened out." But I wasn't confused, and as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house creak and settle around me, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them yet. I was going to figure out exactly what they'd done. I was going to gather evidence. I was going to be smart about this. Because something told me this was bigger than a few unauthorized charges. Something told me my son and daughter-in-law had been planning this for a long time, and I was going to find out exactly how far they'd gone. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I walked across my front lawn to Richard Chen's house and asked a retired police detective for help catching my own son stealing from me. Richard had been my neighbor for 12 years, ever since he and his late wife, Linda, moved in next door. After Linda passed 3 years ago from ovarian cancer, Richard and I had formed a quiet friendship, two widowed people who understood loss without needing to explain it. We'd share coffee sometimes on Saturday mornings, swap books, complain about the weather. He opened his door in sweatpants and a faded police academy t-shirt, a cup of coffee in his hand. "Maggie, everything okay? You look upset." "Richard, I need your help." My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay composed. "I think my son is stealing from me, and I don't know what to do." His expression shifted instantly from neighborly concern to focused attention. I saw the detective persona take over. "Come inside." Over the next hour, sitting at his kitchen table surrounded by his dead wife's decorative plate collection, I laid out everything. The bank charges, the authorized user status, the lies about the Aruba vacation, the $12,000 missing in 3 months. Richard listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes on a yellow legal pad with the kind of careful attention that made me understand why he'd been good at his job. When I finished, he sat back and rubbed his jaw. "Maggie, I'm going to be straight with you. This is elder financial abuse. It's a felony in Ohio. But before we go to the police, we need documentation. Solid, irrefutable evidence. Because if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right." My stomach churned. "He's my son, Richard." "I know." His voice was gentle but firm. "And I'm sorry. But what he's doing is a crime. And from my experience, this kind of thing doesn't stop on its own. It only escalates." So I made the hardest decision of my life. I was going to investigate my own child. Richard helped me create a system. First, I printed out 6 months of bank statements, not just 3 months, and we went through them together. He showed me how to organize the evidence, highlighting every charge I didn't make in yellow, every suspicious cash withdrawal in pink, every charge they'd given me an excuse for in blue. When we finished, the numbers were staggering. Not $12,000, $18,750. In 6 months, they'd stolen almost $19,000 from me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Now," Richard said, sliding a fresh legal pad toward me, "I want you to start keeping a journal. Every time they visit, write down the date, time, what was said, what they did, every conversation about money, everything. Details matter in court." Court. The word hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about getting my money back. This could mean criminal charges, prison time, my son in handcuffs. Richard must have seen something in my face because he put his hand over mine. "I know this is hard, but you need to protect yourself. If you don't stop him now, how far will he go? What happens when the 18,000 becomes 50,000? 100,000? What happens when your savings account is empty?" He was right. I knew he was right. Richard also suggested something that made me deeply uncomfortable: a small security camera for my living room. "If they're this brazen with your money, they might say something incriminating when they think you're not paying attention. Ohio is a one-party consent state. You can record conversations in your own home without telling them." The camera arrived 2 days later. Richard helped me set it up, disguised inside a decorative clock on my bookshelf. the kind of clock with Roman numerals that Henry had bought me for our 30th anniversary. I felt like a spy in my own home, and I hated it. But I activated it anyway. That Sunday, Jason and Vanessa came for dinner as usual. I served pot roast, Jason's favorite since he was 7 years old, and made small talk about the weather, the neighbor's new puppy, a book I was reading. I was playing the role of oblivious elderly mother, and apparently, I was convincing. "This is delicious, Mom," Jason said, loading his plate with seconds. "You haven't lost your touch." "You should teach me how to make this," Vanessa added with that practiced smile. "I can never get the meat this tender." I smiled back and poured more wine. Inside, my heart was racing. After dinner, while I was in the kitchen cutting lemon meringue pie, I heard their voices from the living room. Low, casual, not bothering to whisper because they assumed I was old, half-deaf, harmless. The camera was recording everything. "How much did you get this time?" Vanessa's voice was clear through the kitchen doorway. "500 from the ATM yesterday." Jason sounded pleased with himself. "I'll grab another 500 tomorrow. She never checks her balance anymore. We need at least 3,000 more before Friday for the country club deposit. Can you get it by then?" "Yeah, I'll do a transfer on Wednesday, direct from her account to ours. She's so out of it lately. I don't think she even knows what day it is half the time." They laughed. My son and his wife laughed about robbing me while I stood 10 feet away with a knife in my hand and tears streaming down my face. I had to grip the counter to stay standing. The pie blurred in front of me. I wanted to storm in there, throw the pie at them, scream until my voice gave out. But I didn't. I wiped my eyes, composed my face, and brought out the dessert. "Here we are." My voice came out steady, cheerful even. "Lemon meringue, Jason's favorite since he was 7 years old." "Thanks, Mom," Jason said, kissing my cheek like he was a dutiful, loving son. "You're the best." I watched him eat the pie I'd made with love, and I felt something inside me die. Whatever maternal instinct had been holding me back from facing the full truth was gone. This wasn't my little boy anymore. This was a thief who saw me as nothing more than an ATM machine. After they left, I took the camera's memory card to Richard's house. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. We watched the footage together on his computer. When it finished, Richard looked at me with genuine sadness in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Maggie. I know this isn't easy. What do I do now?" Now we see how deep this goes, and we gather more evidence. The next morning, I did something they'd told me repeatedly I wasn't capable of doing anymore. I went to the bank alone and requested a meeting with the manager. Sandra Morrison had worked at that branch for 15 years. She'd helped Henry and me open our first joint account. She knew me. "Mrs. Patterson, how can I help you today?" I slid the stack of highlighted statements across her polished desk. "Sandra, I need to know every account, every credit card, every loan that has my name on it. Everything in this bank's system." Her professional smile faded as she looked at the statements. "Of course. Let me pull your complete financial profile." She typed on her computer for several minutes. Then her face changed. "Mrs. Patterson, did you recently open a credit card account with us? About 5 months ago?" My blood went cold. "No, I haven't opened any new accounts." Sandra turned her monitor toward me. There it was, a credit card in my name. Account opened April 15th. Current balance, $23,412. The room started spinning. "I never opened that. I never signed anything." "Let me pull the application." More typing. Then Sandra printed a document and handed it to me. "Is this your signature?" I stared at the signature line. It looked like my name, but the handwriting was slightly different. The loops were wrong. The slant was off. "That's not my signature," I said quietly. "That's my daughter-in-law's handwriting. I'm a retired teacher. I've seen enough handwriting samples to recognize hers." Sandra's professionalism cracked slightly. I saw sympathy and anger flash across her face. Mrs. Patterson, this is identity theft and fraud. I strongly recommend you contact the police immediately and an attorney who specializes in elder law. I'm working on that, I assured her. But first, I need you to do something for me. I need to close this account, freeze it, report it as fraudulent. And I need to remove my son and daughter-in-law as authorized users on my checking account. Can you help me do that quietly, without them being notified until it's done? Sandra nodded slowly. Absolutely. But I'll need you to come back with a police report for the credit card fraud. That will protect you from liability for those charges. I'll have it by the end of the week. Over the next hour, Sandra helped me lock down my accounts. We removed Jason and Vanessa's access immediately. She also recommended I open a new checking account at a different bank entirely and transfer all my funds there, just to be safe. The credit card bills, where are they being sent? I asked. Sandra checked. To a P.O. box at a UPS store on 5th Street. Of course, they'd rented a mailbox so I'd never see the bills. How long had they been planning this? That afternoon, I drove to the UPS store. The teenager working the counter was helpful when I explained, truthfully, that I was trying to track down fraud. Yeah, a blonde lady comes in to check that box, he said, pulling up the rental agreement on his computer. Usually Tuesdays and Thursdays. Rented it back in April. April. The same month the credit card was opened. I drove home slowly, my mind reeling. This wasn't impulsive theft. This wasn't desperation. This was calculated, planned. They'd been setting this up for months, maybe longer. The authorized user status, the fraudulent credit card, the P.O. box to hide the evidence. How much more was there that I hadn't found yet? That evening, I met with Patricia Donovan, the attorney Richard had recommended. She specialized in elder financial abuse and had prosecuted dozens of cases. Her office was small but professional, with diplomas on the wall and family photos on her desk. I brought everything: the bank statements, the fraudulent credit card application, the recording from my living room, the P.O. box information. I laid it all on her conference table and told her the entire story. Patricia listened, taking notes on her laptop. When I finished, she looked at me with a mixture of respect and concern. Mrs. Patterson, may I call you Maggie? You have a strong case for both civil recovery and criminal prosecution. What they've done constitutes theft, identity theft, and elder financial abuse. In Ohio, these are serious felonies that carry mandatory minimum sentences. What happens next? My voice was steady, but my hands trembled in my lap. We file a police report. We also file a civil suit to freeze their assets and begin recovery proceedings. But Maggie, I need you to understand something. Once we start this process, there's no going back. Your son will be arrested. He could go to prison. This will destroy your relationship with him. I think he already destroyed that, I said quietly, when he decided my money was worth more than my trust. Patricia nodded. There's one more thing I want you to consider. When your son discovers what you've done, and he will, probably when his access to your accounts is cut off, he's going to come to you. He might be angry. He might cry and beg for forgiveness. You need to be emotionally prepared for that confrontation. I thought about Jason as a little boy, crying when he fell off his bike. Jason at his college graduation, hugging me and saying, "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom." Jason at his wedding, promising to always take care of me now that Dad was getting older. I'm prepared, I said, but I wasn't sure if that was true. That night, Richard helped me change all the locks on my doors. As he worked, I sat on the porch steps watching the sun set over my neighborhood, wondering how my life had come to this. Installing security cameras, changing locks, protecting myself from my own son. Maggie? Richard sat down beside me, wiping his hands on a rag. You're doing the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are. When did I fail him so badly that he turned into someone who could do this to me? You didn't fail him. He made choices, bad ones, and now he has to face the consequences. Richard paused. In my 30 years as a cop, I saw a lot of financial elder abuse. You want to know what the saddest part was? Most victims never reported it. They protected their abusers because they were family. They died broke and broken, and the kids who robbed them just moved on to the next victim or inheritance. I won't be one of those victims, I said firmly. I know you won't. That's why I'm helping you. The next morning, I filed the police report. Detective Sarah Brennan took my statement in a small, windowless room at the police station. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed all my evidence carefully, asked detailed questions, and looked at me with something like admiration. Mrs. Patterson, this is one of the most well-documented cases of elder financial abuse I've seen. You did everything right. We'll be opening an investigation immediately, and I'll be coordinating with your attorney. How long before they know? I asked. I'd give it a few days. Once they try to access your accounts and the transactions are declined, they'll know something's up. Be prepared for them to confront you. I nodded. I'm ready. But I wasn't ready. Not really. Because nothing can prepare you for the moment when your child looks at you with hatred in their eyes. That moment was coming. And it was coming soon. 3 days after filing the police report, I received a phone call that changed everything. It was from Dr. Rachel Morrison, my primary care physician, a woman I'd been seeing for 15 years, who'd helped me through menopause, Henry's cancer diagnosis, and my own health scares. Maggie, I need you to come to my office as soon as possible. Her voice sounded tense, professional. Something very concerning has come up. My heart raced. Is it my test results? My blood work from last month? No, nothing like that. Your health is fine, just please come in this afternoon if you can. It's important. I drove to her office with my mind spinning through possibilities, none of them good. But nothing prepared me for what Dr. Morrison told me when I sat down in her consultation room. Maggie, yesterday I received a very strange phone call from an attorney's office requesting copies of my notes documenting your cognitive decline and my recommendations for appointing a legal guardian. The room tilted. What cognitive decline? You've never said anything was wrong with my mind. Dr. Morrison's expression was furious. I'd never seen her angry before. Exactly, because there isn't anything wrong. Your cognitive function is completely normal for your age. Better than normal, actually. You're sharp as a tack. So I was extremely confused by this request. She opened a folder on her desk. When I pressed them for details about why they needed these records, they faxed over what they claimed was my letter recommending you be evaluated for dementia and possibly placed in assisted living or under guardianship. She handed me a document. It was on Dr. Morrison's official letterhead, with her signature at the bottom. The letter detailed supposed concerns about my memory lapses, poor judgment, inability to manage finances, confusion about medications, and wandering behavior. It recommended immediate psychiatric evaluation and consideration of emergency guardianship to protect me from myself. This is a forgery, Dr. Morrison said flatly. I never wrote this letter, I never signed this document, and I've already reported this to the medical board, the police, and the state attorney general's office. This is a serious crime, Maggie. Someone forged my signature on a medical document. My hands trembled as I held the letter, the words blurred. My son is trying to have me declared incompetent. It certainly appears that way. And Maggie, this is extremely serious. This isn't just theft anymore. This is forgery, fraud, and attempted guardianship abuse. Combined with the financial theft you already told me about, this paints a picture of a coordinated, long-term scheme to take control of your entire life. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. It was one thing to steal money, but this was an attempt to strip me of my autonomy, my independence, my very identity as a capable adult. They weren't just robbing me. They were trying to erase me, to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could legally seize everything I owned. What attorney's office made the request? I managed to ask. Dr. Morrison showed me the fax header. Herbert Grayson, attorney at law, estate planning and asset protection, an address downtown. I'd never heard of him. I drove straight from Dr. Morrison's office to Patricia Donovan's. When I showed her the forged letter, her professional composure cracked for just a moment. I saw pure anger flash across her face. "This escalates everything," Patricia said grimly, already dialing her phone. "This isn't just theft anymore. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery of medical documents, and attempted guardianship abuse. I'm calling Detective Brennan right now." Over the next few hours, sitting in Patricia's conference room, drinking terrible coffee from a machine in the hallway, the full scope of Jason and Vanessa's plan emerged. Patricia made calls, sent emails, pulled documents. Detective Brennan arrived with another detective from the fraud unit, a heavy-set man named Rodriguez, who took notes while Brennan asked questions. Herbert Grayson, it turned out, was a somewhat shady attorney who specialized in emergency guardianship and asset protection for families in crisis. When contacted by Detective Brennan, he initially tried to claim attorney-client privilege until informed that he was potentially complicit in elder abuse, fraud, and forgery. Faced with possible criminal charges himself, he quickly provided copies of all his communications with Jason and Vanessa. The timeline was damning. Jason and Vanessa had first contacted Grayson 3 months ago, back in August, right after their Aruba vacation, with a story. Jason's elderly mother was experiencing severe cognitive decline. She was becoming paranoid and erratic with money, making wild accusations against family members, forgetting conversations and agreements. They were deeply concerned she'd drain her life savings on scams or give it away to strangers. They wanted to establish emergency guardianship to protect her from herself. Grayson had asked for medical documentation to support the guardianship petition, so they forged it. "They were planning to have you declared incompetent in court," Patricia explained, spreading documents across the conference table. "Then they'd be appointed your legal guardians with full control over your assets, your house, your savings, your pension, everything. It's actually more common than people realize. Adult children manufacture a crisis, present forged evidence of incompetence, and a judge grants them guardianship. Once they have legal control, they drain the accounts, sell the house, and it's all completely legal because they're the court-appointed guardians." "But I'm not incompetent," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm sitting here having this conversation. I filed a police report. I gathered evidence. I'm managing everything." "We know that," Detective Brennan said gently. "And we have Dr. Morrison's testimony stating unequivocally that you're cognitively sound. But if they'd succeeded in getting a court order before we discovered this, it would have been very difficult to reverse. Guardianship cases are rubber-stamped all the time, especially when there's medical documentation and concerned family members. Judges don't have time to investigate thoroughly." Richard, who'd driven to the attorney's office with me, spoke up. "How close were they to succeeding?" Patricia slid another document toward me. "They had a hearing scheduled for December 18th, 3 weeks from now. If we hadn't discovered this, they would have gone before a judge with forged medical records, fabricated claims of incompetence, and a request for emergency guardianship. And because Jason is your only child and appears to be a successful, concerned son, they very likely would have won." The date hit me like a physical blow. December 18th, 3 weeks. If I hadn't noticed the bank charges, if I hadn't questioned the lies, if I hadn't asked Richard for help. In 3 weeks, I could have been declared incompetent and lost everything. My home, my money, my freedom. They could have placed me in a nursing home against my will while they auctioned off my life. "I want them arrested," I said clearly, looking at Detective Brennan. "I don't care that he's my son. I want both of them arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Detective Brennan nodded. "We're building the case now. We have the financial theft, nearly $19,000. We have the identity theft and fraud with the credit card. We have the forged medical documents. We have the attempted fraud on the court. We're also going to examine their financial records to see if they've done this to anyone else. These schemes rarely start with family. There's something else you should know, Detective Rodriguez added, flipping through his notes. When we ran Jason Patterson's background, we found he has significant gambling debts. He owes approximately $47,000 to 3 different casinos. He's been banned from 2 of them for trying to use fraudulent credit. Vanessa Patterson has credit card debt totaling $32,000 across 8 different cards, most of them maxed out. So that was it. They weren't just greedy, they were desperate, drowning in debt and looking at their elderly mother as a life raft. There's one more thing, Patricia said carefully. Your son doesn't know yet that you've discovered all of this. He knows you changed your bank information. That became obvious yesterday when several of his transactions were declined. But he doesn't know about the police investigation, the fraud charges, or that we've uncovered the guardianship scheme. What are you suggesting? I asked. I'm suggesting we let him come to you, because when he does, and he will, he's going to try one of 2 tactics. Either aggressive intimidation to regain control or emotional manipulation to make you back down. Either way, with proper recording and witnesses, anything he says can be used as evidence of his intent and his consciousness of guilt. You want me to confront them. I want you to be prepared when they confront you, Patricia corrected, because they will, probably very soon. That was Thursday. I went home, checked that my security camera was working, and waited. The house felt different now, contaminated somehow. Knowing that Jason and Vanessa had been planning to take it from me, to declare me incompetent and lock me away, made every room feel unsafe. Friday passed without incident. I worked in my garden, pretending everything was normal, while my heart raced every time a car drove past. I kept my phone close. Richard checked on me 3 times. Saturday morning, Richard came over with fresh coffee and bagels. You doing okay? No, I admitted. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd served Jason pot roast and pie while he laughed about stealing from me. I keep thinking about what kind of mother I must have been to raise someone capable of this. Stop, Richard said firmly. You're a good person who loved your son and gave him every opportunity. He made his own choices. His choices, not yours. You didn't fail him. He failed you. Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. Jason. I stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering. Patricia had coached me. Act normal, don't reveal what you know, record everything. Hi, honey, I answered, proud that my voice stayed steady. Mom. His tone was clipped, cold, not the loving son voice he usually used. We need to talk. I'm coming over tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock, be home. He hung up before I could respond. My hands were shaking. This was it. The confrontation was coming. I immediately called Patricia and Detective Brennan on a 3-way call. They'd both been expecting this. Tomorrow afternoon, Detective Brennan said, I'll have 2 officers in an unmarked car down the street. If at any point you feel unsafe or threatened, you use the code word we discussed, Henry, and they'll be at your door in 30 seconds. Understood? I don't think he'll hurt me physically, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure anymore. Maggie, Patricia's voice was serious. He's desperate. His scheme is falling apart. He's facing criminal charges, bankruptcy, and prison. Desperate people do desperate and sometimes violent things. Please take this seriously. Have your phone in your pocket, keep the camera running, and don't hesitate to use that code word. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Jason as a baby, as a child, as a young man. His first day of kindergarten when he cried and clung to my leg. His high school graduation when he thanked me in his speech. His wedding when he danced with me and whispered, "You'll always be the most important woman in my life, Mom." Where had I lost him? Or had I ever really known him at all? Sunday morning, I got dressed in my church clothes, a simple navy dress and the pearl necklace Henry gave me on our 25th anniversary. If I was going to face my son's wrath, I was going to do it with dignity. Richard came over and checked the security camera, made sure it was recording, tested the audio quality. "I'm right here if you need me," he said, positioning himself on his own porch where he could see my front door. "One word, and I'm coming over." At exactly 2:00 p.m., Jason's silver BMW pulled into my driveway. Fast, aggressive, but he wasn't alone. Vanessa was with him, and from the expressions on both their faces as they got out of the car, this wasn't going to be a pleasant visit. I opened the door before they could knock, my hand steady despite the fear coursing through me. "Hello, Jason. Vanessa. Come in." They pushed past me into the living room, my living room, where I'd raised Jason, where Henry and I had celebrated Christmases and birthdays and quiet Sunday evenings, where I'd built a life. Jason spun around to face me, and I saw his face was red with fury. His hands were clenched into fists. "What the hell did you do, Mom?" I closed the door quietly behind them and walked to Henry's old armchair. I sat down slowly, folded my hands in my lap, and looked at my son. And I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. I closed the door quietly behind them and walked to Henry's old armchair. I sat down slowly, folded my hands in my lap, and looked at my son. The security camera on the bookshelf was recording everything. My phone was in my cardigan pocket, ready if I needed to call for help. "I protected myself from thieves," I said evenly. "Thieves!" Vanessa shrieked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "We're your family. We were helping you." "Helping yourselves," I corrected calmly, "to $18,750 from my checking account over the past 6 months, to $23,412 charged to a fraudulent credit card opened in my name, to my home, my savings, my entire life, through a forged guardianship scheme." The color drained from Jason's face. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "I don't know what you're talking about," Jason started, but his voice lacked conviction. His eyes darted to Vanessa, then back to me. I stood up and walked to my bookshelf. I pulled out a folder, a copy of all the evidence Patricia had prepared for me. I dropped it on the coffee table between us with a soft thud that seemed to echo in the silent room. Bank statements with your charges highlighted in yellow. The fraudulent credit card application with Vanessa's handwriting. "I was a teacher for 35 years, dear. I know your handwriting." Security camera footage of you both in my living room last Sunday, laughing about stealing from me and discussing how out of it I am. The forged letter from Dr. Morrison recommending I be placed under guardianship. The court documents for the guardianship hearing you scheduled for December 18th. Vanessa stumbled backward and sank onto my couch, her designer purse sliding off her shoulder. Jason stared at the folder like it was a venomous snake. "You've been recording us?" he whispered, his face a mixture of shock and rage. "In your own house?" "In my own house," I confirmed, "which is completely legal in Ohio. One-party consent state. Look it up." "Mom, this is insane." Jason took a step toward me. "Don't." My voice came out harder than I'd ever spoken to him. "Don't come any closer. Don't touch me. And don't you dare call me insane when you were literally trying to have me declared incompetent so you could steal everything I own." "We weren't stealing," Vanessa found her voice, standing up from the couch. "You gave us access to that account. You added us as authorized users." "For emergencies," I said. "Morton's Steakhouse isn't an emergency. A $5,000 vacation to Aruba isn't an emergency. A Rolex watch isn't an emergency." "You don't understand," Jason said, his voice taking on that pleading tone. "We were in trouble. I had debts, gambling debts. The casinos were threatening to—" "So, you stole from your widowed mother?" I felt my voice crack slightly, but I pushed forward. "I would have helped you, Jason, if you'd been honest, if you'd asked. If you'd treated me like a human being instead of an ATM machine you could drain until I died." "We needed the money," Jason shouted, his composure finally breaking. "You don't need all that money sitting in the bank. You're just one person. You live in this house that's way too big for you. You have all these savings just sitting there doing nothing. It's my money. I shouted back, surprising all three of us. I never shouted. I earned it. Henry and I saved it for 42 years. It's for my retirement, my medical expenses, my future. It's not yours to take. You're our inheritance, Vanessa spat out, her mask completely dropping now. You're going to die eventually and leave it to Jason anyway, so what's the difference if we use it now when we actually need it? The room went completely silent. I stared at her. At this woman my son had married, and I finally understood. To them, I was already dead. I was just an obstacle standing between them and money they'd already spent in their minds. The difference, I said quietly, is that it's not your money until I'm gone. And even then, I could donate every penny to charity if I wanted to. That's what ownership means. Jason ran his hands through his hair, pacing now. Okay, you're right. We screwed up, we made mistakes, but Mom, please, we can fix this. We'll pay you back. We'll get help. I'll go to Gamblers Anonymous. We'll do whatever you want. Just please, don't do anything drastic. Drastic? I almost laughed. Jason, I've already done it. I filed a police report 5 days ago. I have an attorney. The fraudulent credit card has been reported to the bank. Dr. Morrison reported the forged medical documents to the State Medical Board and the Attorney General. Your lawyer, Herbert Grayson, has already provided all his communications with you to the police to avoid being charged himself. You called the police? Jason's voice was barely a whisper. On your own son? My own son committed multiple felonies against me: theft, identity theft, fraud, forgery, attempted guardianship abuse. Each word was a stone I was placing between us, building a wall. Yes, Jason, I called the police, because that's what you're supposed to do when someone commits crimes against you. How can you do this to your own son? Jason exploded, his face red. After everything I've done for you, after all the times I helped you, visited you, took care of you after Dad died. Took care of me. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. You robbed me. You forged medical documents to have me declared incompetent. You were planning to take away my home, my independence, my dignity. That's not taking care of someone, Jason. That's destroying them. I'm sorry, he shouted, tears in his eyes now. Okay? I'm sorry. I made a mistake. But you're going to ruin my entire life over a mistake? It wasn't a mistake, I said firmly. A mistake is accidentally taking $20 from the wrong account. What you did was deliberate, calculated, systematic theft over 8 months, combined with identity fraud and a coordinated scheme to have me declared mentally incompetent. Those aren't mistakes, Jason. Those are crimes. And they were all planned. You chose this. Vanessa grabbed her purse and turned to Jason. We need to leave. Right now. We need to call our own lawyer. You'll need a criminal defense attorney, I said. Patricia Donovan has already recommended several if you'd like her list. I hate you, Jason said suddenly, his voice low and venomous. I hate you so much. You're a vindictive, bitter old woman who can't stand to see me happy. This is revenge because Dad loved me more than he loved you. Don't. My voice cut through his words like ice. Don't you dare talk about your father. Henry loved you with his whole heart. He worked himself to exhaustion to give you opportunities. And if he were alive to see what you've become, it would kill him all over again. Jason flinched like I'd slapped him. I'd like you both to leave now, I said, walking to the door and opening it. And I don't want you to come back, ever. No. Vanessa crossed her arms. We're not leaving until you fix this. You call your bank right now and restore our access. You call the police and tell them it was a misunderstanding, or we're not going anywhere. I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up. I can say one word, and there are police officers down the street who will be here in 30 seconds. The word is Henry. Would you like me to say it? They both stared at me. In that moment, I saw the realization hit them. I was serious. I wasn't backing down. Their scheme had failed, and there would be consequences. You're going to regret this, Jason said, his voice low and threatening as he moved toward the door. When everyone finds out what you've done, turned on your own family, had your son arrested, they're going to see you for what you really are. Tell whoever you want, I said calmly. The truth is documented, the evidence is filed, and I suspect most people will understand a mother protecting herself from thieves, even when those thieves happen to be related to her. Vanessa grabbed her purse and stormed past me toward the door. But Jason stayed, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anger? Betrayal? Or was it finally, shame? I'm your son, he said quietly. I'm your only child. Dad's gone. I'm all you have left. You were all I had left, I corrected gently but firmly, until you decided my bank account was more important than my love. Now you're just someone who stole from me, and I won't be a victim, Jason. Not even for you. He flinched like I'd hit him. Then he walked out. I closed the door behind them, locked it, and stood there with my hand on the deadbolt, listening to his BMW screech out of my driveway. Then I walked to the window and watched until his car disappeared around the corner. Richard appeared at my door 60 seconds later. He didn't say anything, just pulled me into a hug while I sobbed into his shoulder, not for what I'd lost, but for what had never really existed in the first place. The day after the confrontation, Detective Brennan called with news. Mrs. Patterson, based on the evidence you've provided, including the recorded confrontation yesterday where your son and daughter-in-law essentially admitted to the theft and demanded you reverse your protective measures, the district attorney has expedited the case. Arrest warrants have been issued for both Jason and Vanessa Patterson. My stomach dropped, despite knowing this was coming, despite wanting it. When? The warrants will be served today. I wanted to give you advance notice in case they try to contact you. If they do, don't answer. Let it go to voicemail. Everything they say now can be used as evidence. I understand. Maggie, Detective Brennan's voice softened slightly. I know this is hard, but you did the right thing. You protected yourself and potentially prevented them from victimizing others. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my coffee getting cold. In a few hours, my son would be arrested, handcuffed, read his rights, processed like a common criminal. Because that's what he was. But he was also my son. The baby I'd rocked through colic. The little boy who'd brought me dandelions and called them flowers. How do you reconcile those two truths? 3 hours later, my phone rang. Jason's number. I almost didn't answer, remembering Detective Brennan's advice, but something made me pick up. I put it on speaker and pressed record on my phone like Patricia had taught me. Mom? Jason's voice was panicked, breathless, humiliated. Mom, the police just came to my office. They arrested me in front of everyone. My boss, my clients, my co-workers. Everyone saw them put handcuffs on me and walk me out. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Jason. You did. You stole from me, and now you're facing the consequences. They're charging us with felonies, multiple felonies, Mom. Do you understand what that means? I'll lose my job. We'll lose the house. We could go to prison, actual prison. Yes, I said calmly, though my hands were shaking. I understand exactly what that means. It means the justice system is working. How can you do this to your own son? His voice cracked, oscillating between rage and desperation. After everything I've done for you, after all the times I helped you, visited you after Dad died. You helped yourself to my money, I interrupted. There's a significant difference. I'm sorry, he shouted, and I could hear voices in the background. Police station sounds. Okay? I'm sorry. I made a mistake, a huge mistake. But you're going to ruin my entire life over a mistake? It wasn't a mistake, Jason. A mistake is accidentally withdrawing from the wrong account. What you did was deliberate, systematic theft over 8 months. You opened a credit card in my name. You forged medical documents. You tried to have me declared incompetent so you could legally steal everything I own. Those aren't mistakes. Those are calculated crimes. Silence on the other end. Then, "Please, Mom, please drop the charges. I'll pay you back every penny. I'll get help for the gambling. I'll do anything. Just please make this go away." And there it was again. Not remorse for hurting me, not shame for betraying my trust. Just fear of consequences and a desperate desire to make them disappear so he could continue his life as if nothing had happened. I can't make it go away, Jason. And even if I could, I wouldn't. Because if I let you off now, you'll do this to someone else. Maybe another girlfriend or wife down the road. Maybe a business partner. Maybe an elderly client. You need to face what you've done. "I hate you," he said suddenly, viciously. "I hate you so much. You're a vindictive, bitter old woman who can't stand to see me happy. You never loved me. You only loved Dad." I hung up. My whole body was trembling. I immediately forwarded the recording to Detective Brennan and Patricia Donovan. Patricia called back within minutes. "Maggie, that recording is incredibly valuable. It's an implicit admission of guilt and a clear attempt to manipulate you into dropping charges. This strengthens our case significantly." "He said he hates me," I said quietly, staring at my phone. "He's angry and scared and lashing out at the person he thinks he can still manipulate, you. It's textbook behavior from someone facing consequences for the first time in their life. Don't take it personally." But how could I not take it personally? He was my son. That night, the local news ran a story. I watched it on my laptop because I didn't want to see it on the big TV in the living room where Jason and Vanessa had sat, eating my pot roast while planning to rob me. A local medical device sales representative and his wife were arrested today on multiple felony charges related to elder financial abuse. Police say 38-year-old Jason Patterson and 35-year-old Vanessa Patterson allegedly stole nearly $19,000 from Patterson's elderly mother over an 8-month period. Authorities also say the couple opened a fraudulent credit card in the victim's name, accumulating over $23,000 in debt, and allegedly forged medical documents in an attempt to have the victim declared incompetent. If convicted, both face up to 10 years in prison. The victim, whose name is being withheld, is said to be cooperating fully with investigators. They showed Jason's photo. His professional headshot from LinkedIn, the one where he looked successful and confident in his expensive suit. Now that photo was associated with the words elder abuse and felony fraud. My phone started ringing. Friends from church, former teaching colleagues, neighbors. Everyone wanted to know if I was okay, if the story was true, if I needed anything. The hardest call came from Marie, Jason's godmother, and my late best friend, Sandra's sister. "Maggie, I just saw the news. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." "You believe me?" I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded. "Of course I believe you. I know you, Maggie. You're one of the most honest, kind people I've ever met. If you went this far, it's because you had no other choice. And frankly, I'm not entirely surprised about Jason." "What do you mean?" "Sandra and I talked about it years ago before she died. She said she was worried about the way Jason turned out. Too entitled. Too focused on appearances and money. She said something like that usually comes back to bite people." I cried then, grateful that someone understood, that I wasn't crazy or cruel or vindictive. Not everyone was supportive. Some people, mostly people who didn't know the full story or who had their own complicated relationships with their adult children, left comments on the news station's Facebook page about how sad it was that families were torn apart over money, how elderly people sometimes get confused and make false accusations, how children should be forgiven because they're family. I stopped reading the comments. 2 weeks later came the arraignment. I didn't attend, but Patricia did, and she called me afterward with an update. They both pled not guilty. Their attorney, they hired Thomas Brenner, he's expensive and somewhat aggressive, is arguing that you gave them permission to use the accounts, that the guardianship petition was filed out of legitimate concern based on behavior they observed, and that you're misremembering events due to age-related cognitive decline. But Dr. Morrison will testify that's false. Exactly. And we have the bank records, the forged documents, the recordings. Their attorney is grasping at straws because he has nothing else. I expect they'll eventually accept a plea deal rather than go to trial. How long will this take? Could be months. The legal system moves slowly, but Maggie, you need to prepare yourself emotionally. This is going to be dragged out. They're going to try every tactic they can think of. She was right. Over the next 6 weeks, it got ugly. Their attorney filed a motion claiming I was mentally incompetent to file charges and requesting a psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Morrison submitted a scathing rebuttal along with my recent medical records showing perfect cognitive function. They tried to claim the security camera recording was inadmissible. The judge ruled it was perfectly legal under Ohio's one-party consent law. They attempted to get Jason released on his own recognizance. The judge, after hearing about the forged guardianship attempt, denied it and set bail at $50,000. They couldn't pay it. Jason spent 3 weeks in county jail before Vanessa's parents mortgaged their house to bail them both out. Throughout all of this, I received letters from Jason, from Vanessa, even from Vanessa's mother, begging me to have mercy and think about the family. Jason's letters oscillated between apologetic and accusatory. One day he was sorry and wanted forgiveness. The next day he was angry and blamed me for ruining his life. I gave them all to Patricia. She said they showed consciousness of guilt and emotional manipulation, both useful for our case. The breaking point came 8 weeks after the arrests. Their attorney, Thomas Brenner, contacted Patricia about a plea deal. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, bank records showing $19,000 in unauthorized withdrawals, the fraudulent credit card with Vanessa's handwriting on the application, the forged medical documents, the recorded conversations, Dr. Morrison's testimony, the timeline from Herbert Grayson showing the planned guardianship scheme, they finally admitted defeat. The terms were harsh but fair. Jason would plead guilty to felony theft and fraud. Vanessa would plead guilty to identity theft and conspiracy. In exchange for their guilty pleas, they'd receive reduced sentences. Jason would get 3 years in prison with possibility of parole after 18 months. Vanessa would get 2 years with possibility of parole after 1 year. They would also be required to pay full restitution, every dollar stolen plus interest, plus the fraudulent credit card debt, plus my legal fees. Their wages would be garnished for the rest of their lives if necessary. Additionally, they would be subject to a permanent no-contact order. They could never contact me again. Ever. Patricia called to tell me they'd accepted the deal. It's done, Maggie. They'll be sentenced next week. You don't have to attend if you don't want to. I want to, I said. I need to see it finished. The sentencing hearing was on a cold Thursday morning in February. I wore my navy dress and pearls again, my armor. Richard drove me to the courthouse and sat beside me in the gallery. Jason and Vanessa sat at the defense table with their attorney. I hadn't seen them in 2 months. Jason looked thin, defeated. Vanessa looked angry, her mouth a tight line. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Monroe, reviewed the case thoroughly. She read the charges, the evidence, the impact statement Patricia had helped me write. Then she looked at Jason and Vanessa. The court has reviewed your case extensively. What you did to Mrs. Patterson isn't just theft. It's a profound betrayal of trust. You exploited her love for you, her vulnerability as a widow, and her willingness to help family. You stole from her systematically over months. You opened fraudulent accounts in her name. And most egregiously, you attempted to have her declared incompetent through forged medical documents so you could legally seize control of her life. Judge Monroe paused, letting her words sink in. This court sees elder financial abuse cases regularly, and I can tell you that most victims never report them. They protect their abusers out of shame or fear or misplaced loyalty. Mrs. Patterson did something brave. She protected herself. And in doing so, she's protected potential future victims. She turned to Jason specifically. Mr. Patterson, I'm going to address you directly. Your mother gave you life. She raised you, educated you, loved you unconditionally. And you repaid that love by treating her like an ATM machine. You laughed about stealing from her. You tried to have her locked away so you could take everything she and your late father worked 40 years to build. That's not just a crime. It's a moral failure of staggering proportions. Jason's head was down. I couldn't see if he was crying. Judge Monroe pronounced the sentences. 3 years for Jason, 2 years for Vanessa. Restitution of $42,750 plus legal fees totaling $18,000. Permanent no-contact order. Do either of you have anything to say before I make this order final? Judge Monroe asked. Vanessa's attorney shook his head, but Jason stood up slowly. Your Honor, may I address my mother? Judge Monroe looked at me. Mrs. Patterson, are you willing to hear from the defendant? Every eye in the courtroom turned to me. I could say no. I could walk out. But something made me nod. Jason turned to face me for the first time. His eyes were red. Mom, I'm sorry. I know those words don't mean anything now. I know I destroyed everything. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, but because I hurt you. You deserved better. You deserved a son who honored you and protected you. Instead, you got me, and I'm sorry. I looked at my son, the man who'd stolen from me, betrayed me, tried to destroy my life, and I felt nothing, not forgiveness, not anger, just a hollow emptiness where my love for him used to be. Thank you for the apology, I said quietly. But it doesn't change anything. Judge Monroe brought down her gavel. The defendants will be remanded into custody immediately to begin serving their sentences. I watched as the bailiffs led Jason and Vanessa away through a side door. Jason looked back once, his face crumpling. Then he was gone. Richard took my arm as we stood to leave. You okay? I don't know, I said honestly. Ask me in a year. Outside the courthouse, Patricia waited with me while Richard brought the car around. You did it, Maggie. It's over. Is it? I asked. Because it doesn't feel over. It feels like something ended, but I don't know what comes next. What comes next is you rebuild your life on your own terms. You're free now. Free from their manipulation. Free from fear. Free to be yourself without someone plotting to take it all away. As Richard drove me home through the gray February afternoon, I looked out the window at my town, the place where I'd lived for 40 years, raised my son, built my life with Henry. It looked the same as it always had. But I was different. I wasn't the naive widow who'd trusted blindly anymore. But I also wasn't sure who I was now. That was something I'd have to figure out. One thing I knew for certain. I would never be a victim again. After they led Jason and Vanessa away through that side door, I sat in the courtroom for a long time. People filed out around me. Other defendants, families, lawyers with briefcases. Richard waited patiently beside me, not pushing me to move. You need a minute? He asked quietly. I need to figure out how to feel, I said. I won. The judge sentenced them. They're going to prison. They have to pay me back. But it doesn't feel like winning. That's because there are no winners in situations like this, Richard said. There's just justice, and sometimes justice feels hollow because it can't give you back what you really lost. He was right. The court could order restitution, but it couldn't give me back my trust. It couldn't undo the nights I'd lain awake feeling betrayed. It couldn't erase the image of my son laughing about stealing from me. Those things were gone forever. Patricia walked us out to the parking lot. The restitution payments will start as soon as they're released from prison. Their wages will be garnished. You'll get your money back eventually, though it might take years. I don't even care about the money anymore, I said, and I realized it was true. I just wanted them to stop, to face consequences. To know they couldn't do this to me or anyone else. You achieved that, Patricia said. And Maggie, what you did took incredible courage. Most people in your situation never report it. They die broke and broken while their abusers walk away. You stood up for yourself. 3 months later, on a warm May morning, I did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I put my house on the market. The realtor, a kind woman named Jennifer, who'd known Henry through Rotary Club, walked through with me taking photos. "Are you sure about this, Maggie? This is a beautiful home. So many memories." "That's exactly why I need to leave," I said, looking around the living room where Jason had eaten my pot roast while planning to rob me. "Too many memories. Some good, but the bad ones are louder now." I sold the house in 2 weeks, got a fair price. Then I bought something I'd always dreamed about, but Henry had always said was impractical: a small cottage by Lake Erie, about 90 miles away. 2 bedrooms, a porch overlooking the water, a garden plot that got full sun. Moving day was bittersweet. Richard helped me pack, along with Marie and some ladies from church. We wrapped Henry's things carefully: his books, his fishing gear, the photos of him with Jason as a little boy. "What are you going to do with these?" Marie asked, holding a frame with Jason's college graduation photo. I took it from her and looked at my son's young, hopeful face. Before the gambling, before Vanessa, before the greed consumed him. "I'm keeping them, not for him, for me. To remember that I was a good mother to a child who existed once, even if that child grew into someone I don't recognize." I settled into the cottage in early June. My first morning there, I sat on the porch with my coffee and watched the sunrise over the lake. The water was calm, almost glassy. Birds I couldn't name made sounds I'd never heard before. And for the first time in over a year, I felt something like peace. Richard visited often, made the drive from our old neighborhood every couple of weeks. We'd have dinner, play Scrabble, talk about everything except Jason. Sometimes we'd just sit on the porch in comfortable silence. The kind of silence you can only have with someone who's been through their own darkness and understands. "You seem different," he said one evening in August. "Lighter somehow." "I feel different," I admitted, like I finally stopped carrying something I'd been holding for too long. I started volunteering at a senior center in the nearest town, teaching a financial literacy class for elderly people. I showed them how to spot scams, how to protect their accounts, how to recognize the signs of financial abuse. Every week, at least one person would come up to me afterward and quietly share their own story. A daughter who'd stolen their Social Security checks, a nephew who'd forged a power of attorney, a caregiver who'd emptied their savings. "Did you report it?" I'd always ask. Usually, they'd shake their heads. Too ashamed, too afraid, too worried about destroying the family. "I understand," I'd say, "but let me tell you what happens if you don't stop them." And I'd tell them my story. Not the whole thing. I didn't need to trauma dump on vulnerable strangers, but enough. The theft, the forged documents, the guardianship scheme, my decision to fight back, the arrests, the trial, the sentencing. "Your son went to prison?" they'd ask, shocked. "My son committed multiple felonies," I'd correct gently. "Prison is where people who commit felonies go." Being related to me didn't change what he did. It just made it hurt more. Some of them filed police reports after our talks, some didn't. But all of them left knowing they weren't alone, weren't crazy, weren't being vindictive. They were protecting themselves, which is what every human being has the right to do. I got updates about Jason and Vanessa occasionally through Patricia. Jason was serving his time at a medium security prison about 3 hours away. Vanessa was at a women's correctional facility. I heard through Marie, who apparently still had connections in our old neighborhood, that Vanessa's parents had disowned her, that Jason had been fired from his job, obviously, and couldn't find work in sales anymore with a felony conviction. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not sympathy, just nothing. They'd made choices. Now they were living with consequences. That was how the world worked. One afternoon in October, almost a year after the sentencing, I received a letter. The return address was the prison where Jason was serving his time. I stared at it for a long time, then called Patricia. "He's allowed to write to you?" I asked. "The no contact order is enforceable. But if you choose to read correspondence from him, that's your decision. You can also refuse to accept it. The prison will note that on his record. I sat on my porch with the letter in my lap, watching the October wind make patterns on the lake water. Part of me wanted to read it. Part of me wanted to burn it. Part of me wanted to throw it in the lake and watch it sink. In the end, I opened it. The letter was 3 pages long. Jason wrote about the anger management classes he was taking, the GED tutoring program he'd started volunteering for, the therapy sessions required by the prison. He wrote about having time to think, to really understand what he'd done. He wrote that he knew sorry wasn't enough, would never be enough, but he was sorry anyway. He wrote that he didn't expect forgiveness, didn't deserve it, but wanted me to know he was trying to become someone better. He ended with, "I understand if you never want to see or hear from me again. I destroyed everything, and that's on me. But if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. I owe you the rest of my life, and I know that. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry I forgot how to show it. Jason." I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer in my bedroom. I didn't respond. Maybe someday I would, maybe I wouldn't. That was a decision I didn't have to make today. I'm 70 now. 2 years have passed since that afternoon when Jason and Vanessa showed up furious at my house. 2 years since I stood my ground and refused to be a victim. I live alone in my cottage by the lake. Richard and I are, well, we're something. Not quite dating, but more than friends. We're 2 people who've been through loss and came out the other side, finding comfort in each other's company. Maybe that's enough. I still teach my financial literacy class every week. I've helped 4 elderly people file police reports against family members who were stealing from them. I've testified as a character witness in 2 elder abuse cases. I've become, somewhat accidentally, an advocate. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, if I wish I'd handled things differently, found some way to resolve it without sending my son to prison. My answer is always the same. No. I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret demanding justice. I don't regret standing up and saying, "This is wrong, and I won't accept it." Because here's what I learned. Being a good mother doesn't mean being a doormat. Loving your children doesn't mean letting them destroy you. Family doesn't give anyone the right to abuse you, steal from you, or strip away your dignity. I gave Jason life. I raised him with love. I gave him every opportunity. What he did with those gifts was his choice. And my choice to protect myself from his choices doesn't make me a bad mother. It makes me a strong woman who refused to go quietly into victimhood. If you're watching this and you're in a similar situation, if someone you love is stealing from you, manipulating you, exploiting your trust, please hear me. You are not alone. You are not being paranoid or vindictive or cruel. You have the right to protect yourself, even if it's family, especially if it's family. Call the police, hire an attorney, change your locks, close your accounts, do whatever you need to do to protect yourself, because your life, your security, your dignity, they matter. You matter. I'm Margaret Patterson. I'm 70 years old. I live by a beautiful lake in a cottage I bought with money I protected from people who tried to take it. And I'm stronger now than I've ever been. Not because of what they did to me, but because of what I did for myself. If this story helped you, please share it. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel. You never know who needs to hear these stories. And remember, it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Never too late to demand justice. Never too late to choose yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, you are worthy of protection, even from those who claim to love you, especially from those who claim to love you.